Imagine your own borders changing overnight. Could one handshake in Alaska really decide that? Miss this story, and you might miss the moment the world order shifts beneath your feet. As Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin touch down in Anchorage for a summit almost too surreal to believe, the stakes are enormous. The future of peace and power, not just in Ukraine, but across the globe. This is not just about war or diplomacy. It is about who gets to rewrite the rules for every nation and redraw entire maps. Trump has threatened very severe consequences for Russia if Putin stalls peace. Yet he also calls this a feel-out meeting. Both leaders are hiding their true intentions, while Ukraine's President Zelensky and Europe's key allies remain locked outside. According to The Hindu, this summit could decide the fate of the Ukraine war and the security of all of Europe. What if the price of peace is Ukrainian land itself? The Guardian notes Trump is pushing Russia to seriously talk about ending the war, but some fear he may legitimize territorial grabs for a quick deal. If these talks fail, trust in international agreements could collapse, new wars could ignite, and global markets and alliances could be thrown into chaos. This is not just two men in a room. It is the fate of every border, every citizen's safety, and the rules that keep our world from unraveling. So how did we reach this razor's edge moment? And what exactly is at stake for all of us? Let's break down what's really happening behind those closed doors. Why is Ukraine not at the table when its very future is being discussed? Today, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are holding their first one-to-one meeting in 6 years. The location? A U.S. military base in Alaska. Around the world, headlines buzz about a possible breakthrough for peace in Ukraine. But there's a glaring omission. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has not been invited to these historic talks. This is not just a snub. It is a seismic shift in how global diplomacy is supposed to work. European leaders and key members of the so-called Coalition of the Willing, including the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, have also been excluded from the negotiations. Instead, decisions about Ukraine's borders, its sovereignty, and its people are happening behind closed doors, with only Trump and Putin in the room. How did we get here? After more than 6 months of failed diplomacy and relentless bombardment of Ukrainian cities, Trump is desperate to fulfill his campaign promise to end the war quickly. But true peace has proved elusive. Ukrainian forces have fought fiercely, but the front line remains stuck. Each day the war drags on, the humanitarian toll and global economic costs rise, fueling pressure on leaders to try something, anything, to stop the bloodshed. So why exclude Ukraine? Some say Trump wants to speak directly to the man in charge, Putin, believing a deal can only be struck if the two largest powers hammer out terms face to face. Others point to Trump's unpredictability. He has previously threatened economically severe sanctions against Russia if Putin blocks a deal, yet he has also backed away from acting on these threats. Ukraine and its allies fear that Trump could be persuaded by Putin to hand over large swaths of Ukrainian land in exchange for a ceasefire, essentially forcing Ukraine to make painful concessions without even having a seat at the table. European leaders tried to intervene. In a last-minute virtual call with Trump and Zelensky, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz insisted, Ukraine must be at the table as soon follow-up meetings take place. But for now, the fate of Ukraine is being shaped without its voice and without Europe's direct involvement. The risk? If a ceasefire or settlement emerges from these talks, it could reward aggression and send a dangerous message to the world that powerful nations can redraw borders by force. Excluding Ukraine and its allies not only undermines the rights of nations to self-determination, but could also destabilize the rules that keep the world more secure. Now, let's dig into what's actually on the table in Alaska and the explosive issues at the heart of these talks. Next, we'll break down the potential deals, sticking points, and what Trump and Putin might really want from each other. Could this summit trigger a wave of invasions, putting your own security and the global order at risk? Imagine if the outcome in Alaska rewards conquest. What would stop other countries from copying the playbook? At the heart of these tense negotiations are brutal, unresolved dilemmas. The most explosive question: will Ukraine be forced to surrender almost 1/5 of its territory, about 19% of its land, currently under Russian control, to secure a ceasefire? This idea of a land swap is dividing policymakers, but Donald Trump has floated that some swapping, changes in land, might be necessary, even as he avoids specifics. For Ukraine and its backers, this feels like a nightmare come true. President Vladimir Zelensky has drawn a line. Ukrainians will not give their land to the occupier. Yet Russia insists that any peace must involve formal recognition of its grip on Donbas, Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Crimea. With demands poles apart, a real breakthrough seems unlikely. As one analyst warns, any success is far from assured, especially as Russia and Ukraine remain far apart in their demands for peace. Donald Trump is trying to squeeze Vladimir Putin, threatening what he calls economically severe sanctions if Russia refuses to negotiate seriously. These measures could hit not just Moscow, but also countries like China, India, and Turkey, who buy Russian oil and funnel money to the war effort. But skeptics argue that Trump has backed down on such threats before, and there are real doubts he will stick to his word this time. But here's what's truly at stake. If a major power is allowed to keep land seized by force, the precedent could unravel decades of international rules. Other nations with territorial ambitions may decide that aggression is worth the gamble, risking new conflicts from Europe to Asia. History shows that decisions like these ripple for generations, destabilizing the laws that prevent wars and keep the global economy running. That's why leaders far beyond Alaska are watching with anxiety. Will this summit pave the way to peace, or open the door to a new age of land grabs and chaos? So what could actually happen next? Let's look at the scenarios that might unfold from the Alaska summit and what they could mean for the rest of the world. Let's break down the possible outcomes, from fragile ceasefires to escalating global tensions. Here's how each scenario could shape your future. Will the world wake up to peace, a new Cold War, or something even worse? Right now, everything hinges on the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska. But as the world watches, the future is far from certain, and the risks reach far beyond Ukraine's borders. Let's break down the 4 most likely scenarios shaping the next era. First, the best case, a negotiated peace, but with compromise. Trump has openly floated the idea of some swapping, changes in land, between Russia and Ukraine, hinting at concessions. In this scenario, a ceasefire is reached and the fighting stops, but at the cost of Ukraine ceding large parts of its territory now under Russian occupation. This could end the immediate bloodshed and offer relief to global markets and food supplies. Yet the cost is immense. Ukraine loses sovereignty over swaths of its land, and the principle that borders can only be changed by force is shattered. Russia, having launched the war, is rewarded with territory. Some European leaders have said Ukraine must be at the table as soon as follow-up meetings take place, but so far, Zelensky remains excluded. The world gets peace, but it is a fragile, dangerous one. Second, a frozen conflict, a ceasefire without a true settlement. This is what many experts see as likely, since Russia and Ukraine remain far apart in their demands for peace. The guns fall silent, but the root issues remain unresolved. Russia keeps its gains. Ukraine is left divided, wounded, and unable to rebuild. The West might ease some sanctions or offer security guarantees, but both sides prepare for the next round. Think of the old Cold War standoffs, with front lines frozen and tensions simmering. Except now, new flashpoints and arms races may emerge across Europe. Third, the summit could collapse entirely, deepening the war. Some analysts warn that any success is far from assured, given the gulf between Russian and Ukrainian positions. If talks fail, Putin could escalate militarily, while Trump might impose economically severe new sanctions, not just on Moscow, but also on countries like India, China, and Turkey, that continue to buy Russian oil. This would ramp up global energy prices, threaten recession, and drive new instability as other nations scramble for resources. Ukraine, left out of the talks, would bear the cost on the battlefield. The fourth, and most dangerous scenario, is global instability. If the summit sets a precedent that land can be won through invasion, other states may follow suit. The world's fragile rules against territorial conquest would be at risk. From Asia to the Middle East, rivals may decide that force, not diplomacy, is the way to solve disputes. We could see a cascade of conflicts, new nuclear arms races, and the unraveling of international security. As one expert put it, this summit could shape the course of Russia-Ukraine war, and perhaps spark new ones. So, who wins and who loses? In scenario 1, Russia walks away stronger. Ukraine loses not just territory, but the sense that the West will defend principles over pragmatism. In scenario 2, both sides suffer a long grinding stalemate with civilians paying the price. In scenario 3, everyone loses. The war deepens, economies falter, and the world grows more divided. In scenario 4, the losers are all of us, security, prosperity, and the hope of a rules-based world. It is a moment of maximum risk and maximum consequence. What happens next will shape not only Ukraine's fate, but the way the world resolves conflict for a generation. The stakes have never been higher. So, with these scenarios in mind, what can ordinary people and leaders actually do? Let's look at the practical steps that matter now. What can you do when history is being written in closed rooms? As Trump and Putin negotiate behind closed doors in Alaska, the impact will ripple far beyond the news cycle. These decisions will set precedents for how powerful nations resolve conflicts or redraw borders well into the future. Here is what to watch for and why it matters. First, the United States has floated the idea of offering security guarantees to Ukraine if certain conditions are met. That sounds reassuring, but the details remain hidden, and the devil is always in the details. Meanwhile, President Zelensky has already made his stance clear. Ukrainians will not give their land to the occupier. Yet, some proposals on the table involve territorial swaps or concessions. This raises a dangerous question. If borders can be changed by force here, what stops it from happening elsewhere? For global citizens, your voice still matters. Stay alert to shifting narratives in your own country. How your leaders frame this summit will shape public opinion and policy. Use your platforms to call for transparency, uphold international law, and make it clear that peace should not come at the expense of justice. If you are worried about your security or economic interests, remember, outcomes here could drive up global prices, shift alliances, and embolden other aggressors. Failing to learn from this moment could mean repeating its mistakes at even higher costs. Policymakers must heed these hard lessons. Lasting peace demands more than bold headlines or handshake deals. It requires upholding the principles that kept the post-war order intact. Compromising those principles, even for short-term calm, risks inviting a future of greater instability.
But the real test is yet to come. Will the world accept the outcomes from Alaska, or will new fault lines emerge? Let's examine the possible scenarios that may unfold after this summit.
Could a single handshake in Alaska put your future and global peace at risk? The rules that have guarded the world for more than 75 years are now on the line. The Trump-Putin summit is not just about peace in Ukraine. It is a trial for the very system built after World War II, one designed to shield nations from invasion and keep the world stable and prosperous. This meeting appears to offer hope for ending Europe's deadliest conflict in decades. Trump promises to pressure Putin into a ceasefire, threatening economically severe sanctions if talks fail. But the real bargain may be Ukraine's surrendering territory to Russia just to halt the bloodshed. If that deal is struck, the price is paid by everyone who relies on international law to keep borders secure. If powerful nations see force rewarded, what prevents more land grabs elsewhere? The consequences could ripple worldwide. A settlement that rewards aggression in Ukraine could spark similar crises in Taiwan, the South China Sea, the Middle East, or Europe. It could disrupt trade, drive up costs, and fracture alliances that have kept war at bay. Trump and Putin may leave Alaska to applause, but if Ukraine loses territory, it sends a message: aggression works, and the world will tolerate it. The real lesson of this summit is about the future we all inherit. If the rules can be rewritten by force, no border is safe, and no alliance is guaranteed. Our own prosperity and safety hang in the balance. So the question is clear. Will we defend the principles that have safeguarded peace for generations, or accept a world where might makes right? The choice we make now will echo for years in our own lives. But why did this summit happen now, and what happens next? Let's break down the forces pushing Trump and Putin to the table.